everyone. Welcome to Say Yes to Success, Strategies for Language Learning. I'm Krista Chambless from the University of Alabama at Birmingham. I'm an associate professor of world languages. I primarily teach Spanish and coordinate the introductory Spanish courses, the first three courses in our sequence. And I also occasionally teach French and the World Language Methods courses for the School of Education. I'd like to thank you all for stopping in to check out my session. I certainly hope that you will find some of my strategies, some of what I have to share with you useful for your class. You've got my email address right here. So if at any time you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. You can send me an email and I will be happy to answer anything that you have. All right. So at this particular time, we will go ahead and get started with the presentation. So my goals for this, there's quite a bit, so I hope that you will find it interesting. I want to describe characteristics of Generation Z or Gen Z, because these characteristics really shape what it is that we do in our classroom. We have to know about our students so that we can develop activities and strategies and whatnot to meet them where they are. So we're going to talk about the characteristics of Gen Z and how that translates into what the needs Gen Z has in the classroom. What are those needs? We're going to talk about the importance of teaching students about world language proficiency, and I'm going to share some activities that I do from a proficiency unit that a colleague of mine and I created. We're going to talk about and name learning strategies that world language students need to be successful. And hopefully we're going to create, I can show you how you can create activities that teach and practice various strategies. One thing that I've really learned is that students are in school for years a lot of times, especially in the United States, before they begin learning a language. So they are not learning a language until high school. So they have all this wealth of knowledge and all of these strategies that have helped them in math, science, social studies, English, but they don't always translate to good strategies for language learning because it's unlike anything else. We're teaching them content and we're teaching them all sorts of things, but we're also teaching them in the target language. And so that has some definite implications. So Generation Z, you can see when they were born. I actually have a Generation Z student in my house at the moment. And I can say that a lot of these characteristics do apply to her. I always thought, well, if you're not a helicopter parent or one of the lawnmower parents, then your kids won't turn out like the whole generation or whatever. But that's not necessarily true. I see a lot of these characteristics in my own kids. So I think one of the most important things is that 25% of the US population is Generation Z. That's huge. That's a large number of students in our class. So what we know about Gen Z is that they are the most diverse and multicultural generation that we've ever had in the United States. That in and of itself will make you go, wow. So we need to make sure that everyone is represented in our world language courses. They are risk averse and sometimes cynical, but the risk averse is extremely important and has lots of consequences for the world language classroom because we want them to take risks in our class. And we have to kind of get them over this worry about risk taking. And they're also very anxious about face-to-face interactions. Well, again, when you're learning a language, that's what you do. That's a lot of what we do are face-to-face interactions. So again, that has consequences for what we do in the class. Continuing on, they are considered digital natives. That means that they've never known a time without cell phones and computers. Now, most people think, oh, well, they're digital natives. They know everything about technology. And there have been lots of studies that actually show that's simply not true. what Gen Z is social media savvy. They can post on Instagram, Snapchat. I mean, they can do all sorts of amazing things with a cell phone. But if you ask them to email you a document, email you with a document attached, they have no idea how to do that. So we have to, again, think about that in terms of our planning for our classes. They are most multitaskers. Most of them want to have more than one thing going on at a time. Even though we know from brain research that multitasking really doesn't exist, most of them will say, of course, I can have music on and YouTube and 18 different things while I'm studying. So again, you've got to think about that. They're constantly updating social media and they have the Google it mindset. I see this in my children all the time. We'll be talking and somebody will have a question. I'm thinking, I don't know. That's good. One of my kids is whipping out their phone and looking it up. That's the Google it mindset. So a lot of them are thinking, well, why do I need to memorize all this? Basically they've got everything they need in their hands and they can look up the answer. So they've also got that mindset, that mentality. And finally, I think these two are really consequential for our classrooms as we're planning. You have 8 seconds to grab the attention of a Gen Zer. Yes, that's right, 8 seconds. And why would that be? Because of the scroll mentality. They're so used to scrolling through Snapchat, Instagram. And so if it doesn't grab their attention, they are scrolling right on past it. So they come into your class and you don't catch their attention, they've already scrolled and they're on to something else. So wow, we've got to really think about how we grab their attention. But then this one right here, I believe, is so true. I think that they should be called Generation Y, not Generation Z, because they question everything. They want to know why they have to do this and why they have to do that. And they expect you to explain to them why they're doing it. Then they expect you to have a good, solid reason for why you're doing what you're doing. My kids do that all the time. They'll come up, I don't even know why we had to do this. This was so ridiculous. It was a waste of time. Why do we have to do such? I mean, it's why all the time. And that's really where some of the activities, some of the strategies that I've come up with are from this particular characteristic of Gen Z. It's why. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. So from all of those characteristics, we know now that they need to be taught how to use the technology that's required in a course. Okay, they they know social media, but they don't know technology. Okay, just because they're digital natives. And they need the opportunity to practice this technology in their native language before you throw the target language at them. We have, what's called cognitive load, and learning new technology is already stressing them out cognitively. You don't want to add a language on top of that. Okay, so it is okay for them to practice with the technology in English before you use it in the target language. The students need to understand the concept of proficiency, because a lot of them want to know why you're doing what you do. Why are you only speaking the target language? We don't even know any Spanish. So why are you doing this? If you explain proficiency, you explain what it means for an introductory language course and what it means for how you're teaching, they're much more accepting of it and they go with the flow. All right. But then most importantly, they have to be taught specific language learning strategies, because what they have learned throughout their school career is not really going to help them very much in language courses. So I really discovered a lot of this and created a lot of what I'm showing you today when I began teaching completely online asynchronously 3 years ago. I have a split schedule. I have 2 classes that are completely online and 2 classes that are face-to-face. And what I discovered is that a lot of what I do online, I need to be doing in my face-to-face as well in terms of the technology skills. So I sat down and I thought about what technology I was going to be using throughout the semester, what technology that they need to know. So of course we use the Canvas learning management system. They need to know how to submit an assignment. They need to know how to post to the discussion board. There's all sorts of things that they need to know about Canvas. So I created activities for them to do in Canvas. This is my Getting Started module. They do it the very first week and they do it on their own at home. We don't spend time in class doing it because they all have to learn how to do it themselves. I teach them how to take a screenshot because if they have a technological problem and they've screenshotted it, it's going to have the date, it's going to have the time, and what the issue is. So as well as I do, some of them is going to be 11:58. They're trying to submit an assignment and Canvas glitches. But if they've got a screenshot, I'm like, okay, well, you were technically in under the deadline, so I'm not going to count it late. There you have it. I also teach them how to type accent marks in a Word document. Textbooks are a nightmare because they always have the little box there, the ebooks and lab manuals and all that, and they just click the little box. So if you ask them to write something in a Word document, they don't have any idea how to make accent marks. So they do an activity with how to type accent marks and why they're important. We talk about that and how they can change meanings of words. I also talk to them about netiquette. There's a syllabus activity. There's all sorts of different activities for all the different types of technology that I use. So I'm very fortunate that Canvas has a great tutorial series. So I didn't have to create any videos on how to use the learning management system. I just had to embed the videos in my assignment. Now, the nice thing about this is that if you already know how to submit an assignment, you don't have to watch the video, you just submit the assignment. So this is 101, very first week. So they're doing it in English. I asked them to write an introduction, 1 to 2 paragraphs in English about themselves. So what's nice about that is that gives me information about them. And I can use that information throughout the semester when we're talking about, so-and-so is from Huntsville and this person is from Athens. And, we can talk about that. And they're like, how does she know that? But it's because I take this information and I can use it and embed it into my class. So it's very, very helpful in that regard as well. So I always try to make sure that I keep those and keep that information. My students have actually given me very positive reviews for the Getting Started module, and they've thanked me because no other courses in the university teach them how to use the learning management system. And so they take the information they've learned in my class and they're applying it to all of their classes across the university. So it's very helpful. Now, in 102 and 201, they have similar modules, but the activities are slightly different. They still have to submit an activity, but by 102, they should be able to write me something in Spanish. So that gives me an opportunity to gauge where their writing is at the beginning of the semester. And again, give me some information about them. So I do change the assignments for each of the 3 courses, but they all have a Getting Started module that works on technology. So they do all of this at home. It takes, depending on how tech savvy they are, 30 minutes to an hour of their time that first week. And I tell them the first week may have a little bit more homework than I would normally give just because of the technology module. All right. So the next thing I do is I start my classes out in the target language always, and my classes are typically 50 minutes. So we do about 25 minutes of target language interaction. Then we switch to our proficiency unit and we talk about proficiency. And yes, this is what I tell them. So in my face-to-face classes, I have a PowerPoint and we go through all of that. In my online classes, I have a series of videos that talks about proficiency. Okay, so they need to understand, and I really stress spontaneous and non-rehearsed because so many of them just want to memorize dialogues. And we know that memorizing dialogues is not proficiency. But for some students, that's what they think it is. So we really have to educate them on, no, that's not what it is. All right. We talk about the actual proficiency levels and the inverted cone. We work on mostly making sure they understand the novice up through intermediate low levels in 101, because we're trying, our goal after those three courses is intermediate low. So we focus on the novice to intermediate low levels in 101. In 102, of course, we're going to review that and maybe talk about intermediate mid. By the time you get to 201, we're really going to focus in on all of the sub levels for intermediate. So again, there are different things that we do. I might give them an activity. I might put them in groups and say, okay, guys, what's the best activity to do in Birmingham on the weekend? And one group might have to answer that at novice low, another group at novice high, another group at intermediate low. We put them on the board, and then we're really looking at them. So the students are saying, okay, so if I just give that one word answer, I'm at the novice low point. And I tell them, that's where you're going to be this first couple of weeks. And that's okay. So we work with that so that they really are able to recognize the proficiency levels, and we use it. I'm constantly recycling it throughout the semester. So if I ask them a question in Spanish and they give me a one-word answer, I might say, that's novice low. Can you level it up a little bit for me? And they know what that means. So they're going to try to give me more. So it really is something that we work on throughout the semester. Another thing that we do is we show them the videos. Actful has great videos on their website. These are in English of what each proficiency level sounds like. This is Leonore. I love her video. She's novice mid. So I show the students, look, this is a novice mid-level learner. This is what they sound like. I think it's super important to show them this for many, many reasons. One is they go, oh, well, she doesn't sound stupid. Now, remember, Gen Z, they're very risk averse. They don't want to take risks. They're afraid they're going to sound stupid. But when they hear her, they're like, oh, well, she doesn't sound stupid at all. Okay. And so it kind of eases some of the tension. It kind of relaxes them a little bit. They're like, okay, well, I'm not going to sound like an idiot. The second thing this does is it gives them a realistic goal. Sometimes in our society, we have such unrealistic expectations. So many people think, well, I've taken a whole semester of Spanish. Why can't I debate politics with the president of Mexico? But I mean, that's not going to happen. But our society, you hear all the, oh, if you just do this 10 minutes a day, you'll be fluent in no time. And we all know as world language educators that that is really not the case. So we give them a goal. We show them the novice low, the novice mid, the novice high. And we're like, this is what you're going to sound like at the end of the semester. And if that's what you sound like, then wow, you've met the goal. And so it kind of relaxes them some, and they're like, oh, wow, I can really, I can meet that goal. Okay. It gives them something to shoot for. So that's important. Um, Sometimes in the online class, I will have a discussion board where they're going to talk to me about proficiency. What is it? And so the goal of the course is novice high. Describe in your own words what a novice high learner sounds like. So they've really got that in their head that this is what I need to shoot for. That's my goal. So we talk a lot about the proficiency and proficiency levels, but then we also talk to them about the modes of communication. Why? Because we use integrated performance assessment. And if you're familiar with IPAs, you assess all three modes: interpretive, interpersonal, and presentational. That's the language that we're using. So the students need to know what that means. So we, again, I have a PowerPoint or a video depending on the class. And then we do activities such as I'll ask them, if you had to prepare a video introducing yourself to the class, what mode of communication is that? Presentational. And that is something that they actually have to do in the class. So now they know, oh, this activity is working on the presentational mode of communication. um, watching a travel video and writing down places of interest, they know that that's interpretive. Sending a text message to a friend, they know that is interpersonal written communication. So we go through all of that. They understand what the modes are, and that's important because of the way that we assess them. So we want this lingo to be very common, and we want the students to be very comfortable with it. So we have to teach them about the modes of communication. Then we also decided, you know what, we need to hit some of the myths of world language learning. One thing that we hear all the time is that everyone speaks English. Well, we all know that's not true. So we do an activity where we have them guess questions. What do you think the answer to this question is? What do you think the answer to that question is? Then they watch the Lead with Languages video that came out a couple of years ago, where you find out that, 95% of the world's business lies outside the US borders. Only 75% of people, 75% of people don't speak English, all that kind of stuff. It's quite shocking for the students. But nonetheless, it's important for them to know. We tackle language skills are nice but not necessary, and we talk about proficiency in the workplace. Again, we will have them guess, what level of proficiency do you think a firefighter might need versus a nurse versus, a UN translator, different things like that. And then they go look at the actual proficiency in the workplace poster. And a lot of times they're very, very shocked by that. Um, we have my friend, Dr. Sandrine Hope. We're kind of, professional friends forever, those professional colleagues that you couldn't survive without. Um, and we've developed all of this. We have all of this. We're happy to share if any of you are interested in any of these things. We use a Google form, so it's very easy to share. If you want, just drop us a note and just drop me a note and I'll let you know. The last myth that we tackle is about Google Translate. We don't need to learn a language. We have Google Translate. So we do a different Google Translate lesson for each of the courses. So right here in 101, they watch Jimmy Fallon and Miley Cyrus sing Google Translate songs. I have that video downloaded to my computer. If any of you need it, I'd be happy to share it with you because I couldn't find it on YouTube the last time I looked. But it's great because they talk about, they sing Ed Sheeran's The Shape of You, and the line that says, "I'm in love with your body" is actually translated as "I like that cadaver." And so, we laugh through the whole thing. We talk about it and how crazy it sounds, and that perhaps it's not really the best idea. So for 102, we have The Tortoise and the Hare, that story that has been put through Google Translate. Now, I'm going to confess that I had way too much time on my hands during the lockdown, and I experimented with Snapchat filters, all sorts of things. And so I had a lot of fun making this next video. I read The Tortoise and the Hare as it, had gone through Google Translate. And so I'm going to show you just a little bit of that video right now.
Hello, everyone. I thought we would take a break today and we would read a story. It's called The Tortoise and the Hare.
The Tortoise and the Hare.
The tortoise and the hare made fun of the day that is slow. "Do you copy?" he asked with a smile, playing. "Yes," replied the turtle. "We'll come sooner than you think. I'll have you try to run the race." The hare, the notion of the kind of tortoise's dunk, but for the sake of which he accepted. Fox, which act as the judge, which started at running, noted.
The hare, the turtle, was transported immediately out of a deep sense of the presence of a certain amount to give a try, to as much as in the kind of laughing, a murmur, and remitted to the place of home to gnat with eager ear turtle as far as there was a layer. And the tortoise went on and grew great, and I will drive more slowly, and finally in the place where he spent an Arcadian hound may give to him. He lay down, but very quietly sleeping hare, when he finally woke up and swallowed the target there, did run forward more quickly than the hare, and had a long time to move he could not. The moral? Always a developer.
Well, what did you think of our story? Did you find it a little odd? I sure did. Well, what do you think was wrong with the story? Well, if you said it was probably run through Google Translate, you would be right.
Okay, so you can see I had way too much fun with that. The students absolutely love it. They think it's hilarious. Of course, we have an activity that we do with that as well, to kind of push home the idea that Google Translate is not really the best thing. So this didn't take me long. I used Snapchat filters and an app called Splicer, spliced it all together, super, super quick, super easy to do. And then in 201, we actually have them use Google Translate. We say, okay, why don't you put this expression in, that's lit, or, oh, he's so bougie, okay, and see what they come up with. And wow, do they come up with some interesting things. So we like to do those lessons as well. And again, they're all, I'll be happy to share with you all. So we do that. And then our last item, if you will, in the proficiency unit are language learning strategies. So this is my favorite quote. The only way to begin speaking in a new language is to begin speaking badly. That is really, really hard for our students. Again, they are risk averse. They're anxious about about face-to-face interactions. So they really need some language learning strategies. So I have Adobe Spark became my best friend. Adobe Spark is super simple. This is the free version I used to make all of my videos actually. I have different videos for all three levels. I want to show you real quick this. I mean, it's not a long video. It's absolutely not a long video. And again, my online students watch the video, and then my face-to-face students, depending on how fast we're moving, sometimes we can get through everything fairly quickly. So I do half Spanish, and then I work on the proficiency unit, the other half of class. But if we're starting to get a little behind because the students are laughing and having a good time and asking a lot of questions, which I want, sometimes we do have to do a few of these things at home. It just really depends on the class. But I will tell you that taking the time to do this unit in the beginning actually saves us time later, because they have strategies. They understand why you're doing what you're doing. They're more open to it. They're more accepting of it, and they're going to go with it. All right. So here is just here's the quick 101 learning strategies video. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Learning Strategies 101. So as a language teacher, I'm often asked, how do I begin learning another language? It's a great question. I think that Greg Thompson probably had the best answer. The only way to begin speaking in a new language is to begin speaking badly. Now, I know a lot of us are, oh no, I don't want to do that. I want to say everything perfectly. Well, you're not going to say everything perfectly because you're a student and you're still learning, but that's okay. I always like to share the example of swimming. If you were to stand on the side of the pool and watch someone swim for 300 hours, but you never jump in the pool, are you actually ever going to learn to swim? No, you have to jump in the pool and start kicking and blowing bubbles and moving your arms. You have to actually do it. A language class is the same way. You have to jump in and start speaking. So you're going to begin speaking badly. What does that mean? That means that strategy number 1 is do not be afraid to make mistakes. You are learning. Mistakes are part of the process. It's okay to make mistakes in language class. I love this sentence. Mistakes are proof that you are trying. And that's what it takes to learn a language. It takes effort and practice, and we learn from our mistakes, and it's okay. So, going along with the idea of making mistakes, you need to be prepared for frustration. Your language skills are not what they are in English. So, you have all these complex ideas that you want to communicate, but your language skills are not there yet. You're going to sound like a first grader, and that's okay. Strategy 3 is be observant. Whether you're online or in a face-to-face class, observing what's going on around you is really important. If you're in a classroom, pay attention to what your teacher's doing in front of the class, or what your classmates are doing. If you're online, pay attention to the videos, take notes of everything that's being posted. Be observant. So strategy 4 is to look for patterns and routines. You may oversimplify something, but that's okay. Small children do that as well. You'll hear them, if they don't know the irregular past participle, for example, to buy, they say, I buyed it instead of I bought it. They oversimplified, but you understood what they meant. So look for patterns and routines to help you. And finally, what else can you do to improve your language learning? You need to increase your input. That means the language that you hear. You need to hear your target language. So listen to music in the target language. Change your cell phone. Watch a movie with subtitles in the target language, not in English. Otherwise, you're just going to be reading your movie. Visit a grocery store, text a friend, etc. You can check out new websites. There are so many different opportunities for you to interact in the language. Read a book, read a newspaper article. But if you will follow these strategies, you'll be much more successful in this course. Okay, so you see how quick that was. They're very simple, but yet very important, because the students need to know that they're going to be frustrated and they're going to make mistakes, and that's what you expect. So that was our 101 video. In 102 and 201, we talked to them about being an extrovert and participating. We kind of revisit the swimming analogy a little bit. We talked to them about going with the flow, because as we know, for every rule, there are 100 exceptions, okay? We talked to them about using circumlocution, about leveling up, and again, about ways to increase input. And in certain classes, proficiency activities. Why don't you choose, between these activities this week and spend 15 minutes listening to music or watching YouTube videos in the target language, or you give them a choice of how they want to increase their input. So we do that, and I have my students actually pick 2 of the strategies maybe that they're going to try and implement. And of course, the first one is always, I'm going to really try hard not to be worried about making mistakes. Everyone always chooses that. Some of them might choose their second strategy as, I'm going to change my cell phone language, or I'm going to, try to watch a movie every week in the target language or something. So I have them write down those strategies. And at the end of the first unit, I'm like, okay, let's revisit. How did you do with these strategies? Do you think it helped? Did this strategy not help you? Okay, well, if you liked that and it seems to be working, let's pick a third strategy to add to it. Okay, we're going to look at this, that, or the other. Okay, and we do that at the end of each unit. So they're constantly adding different strategies that they're focusing on throughout the semester. And I think that really, really helps them. Okay. So that's what we finish up in the first, week or 2 weeks. And then throughout the rest of the course, I sprinkle in the rest of the strategies. So reading strategies, we have several different lessons that they do on cognates. I think a lot of times we take for granted that, well, it's a cognate, but they need to realize that there are patterns to cognate, such as CION in Spanish is TION in English. Words that end in DAD are usually TY. They need to see those, and a lot of times they don't recognize those patterns. So we do that. We talk about text type and how you can guess what kind of information is going to be in there just from the type of text that it is. Guessing meaning from context. We're going to look at specific strategies for that. Also, when to use a dictionary, because so many times students think that they need to translate every single word that they're reading, and we don't want them to do that. We have to kind of get them out of the habit of that. We have to teach them, look, you're a good reader in English and you do all of these things automatically. But for whatever reason, when you look at the target language, you panic, and you shouldn't. So we have to reinforce the strategies that they already know and use automatically in English. We have to break them down and teach them to them in the target language and remind them of a lot of that. So here are a couple of examples. This is look at the following and identify the text type. Okay, so they look at this and they have to choose. This is a university brochure. So then the next question is going to be, what kind of information would you expect to find in a university brochure? And again, they would do this automatically if it were in their native language, but in their target language, they may not even be thinking of that. So we've got to, again, take them through that process, but we're doing it in the target language. Again, I also teach French sometimes. So I love to take screenshots of just, front pages of newspapers and different things. And like this one, for this one, honestly, the first thing I had them do is write down all of the cognates that they noticed. So, of course, they're going to write test, social. Then you've got contrôle judiciaire, hamburger, so they're writing all of those down just to see how many cognates they can find. Then we might talk about one and go, well, can you maybe speculate on what you think this article might be about based on your use of the cognates and whatnot to kind of predict. So very, very simple, very, very easy activities to create. It doesn't take that long at all. As a matter of fact, sometimes you might even have your students do the screenshots. Why don't you go to this newspaper and, do a screenshot and, circle or make a list of all the cognates that you see. And then you don't even have to do it. The students are doing it. So there's lots of ways that you can do that to teach them the reading strategies. One of the most important, though, strategies that they need, and this one they use in not only in reading, but in viewing and in listening, is guessing meaning from context. Because a lot of times they really, really do not know about guessing meaning from context. So we have to teach them. And so again, I have videos, activities, and everything. So, los niños son muy ingeniosos o inteligentes. So your students may go, ingeniosos, I don't know what that means. But they know o inteligentes or intelligent. So here the author has used a synonym, right? Inteligentes is a synonym for ingeniosos. So the students can figure that word out just by using the synonym. Likewise, they can use the antonyms, right? So they won't know, my goodness, what is cautivador? But they don't know, but they do know what aburrido is. So if it's no aburrido, if it's not boring, it must be interesting, captivating, whatever word you want to use. So they can figure out what cautivador means by using the antonym. A lot of times they have not thought of that. Again, simply because it's the target language rather than their native language. So we go through a lot of this and I give them sentences just like this. And it doesn't take that long to create these sentences. And they figure out, oh, I see. Okay. In the online class, this is a video, again, made with Adobe Spark, and then I put it in Kaltura. Kaltura is the program that we use at UAB. It's very much like Edpuzzle. So it's got questions embedded actually in the video. So we'll say, okay, now based on what you know about using antonyms, what do you think cautivador means? And it gives them some choices. So that's how I kind of assess that and give them some practice for that. We also teach them guessing meaning in context. We talk to them about, definitions and pictures, all the different sort of contexts. So we have, la niña es joven, solo tiene 4 años. Well, we might not know what joven means, but we look at this and we know it's a little girl. And then we know, oh, she's only 4 years old. So joven must mean little, young, something along that line. She's a young girl because they're talking about age. Likewise, they may give you an example. La casa es colosal como un elefante, right? So the house is something like an elephant. Well, we know an elephant is big. So the house obviously is big. Oh, it must be colossal. Colossal is big. Now, while that seems obvious to us to figure out, a lot of times these students have not been taught how to do this. So we have to work with them and give them these types of strategies. The guessing meaning and context videos are actually, my students say those are some of the most helpful videos or lessons, if you will, depending on face-to-face or whatever, that I have. And most of them really, really appreciate that. Next, we have the writing strategies. So, unfortunately, most students think, oh, well, I'll just write it out in English and translate it. And you guys know what that means. It means disaster. So I go through the writing process with them. I want them to understand that writing is a process that you have to edit, revise, reread, all sorts of things. But the most important thing I want them to get in the beginning is that they need to start writing in the target language. So they will brainstorm. If it's face to face, we do it in the class. I write all their brainstorming ideas on the board. If it's in the online class, they have a graphic organizer that they have to fill out and they have to start brainstorming about the topic. So we will brainstorm about the topic and kind of go through it that way. In 101, we use the KISS principle. The KISS principle is keep it simple, students. I want them to keep it simple in 101 because I don't want them to go to Google Translate. A lot of times that they resort to Google Translate because they have these huge complex ideas that they want to communicate and their language skills won't let them. So I tell them to keep it simple. Okay. Now, keeping it simple doesn't mean it's boring or lacking in variety. They also know that if their paragraph or their whatever it is consists of I like to swim, I like to eat, I like to run, that's not going to count. That counts as one sentence because all they did was change the verb, and that's not good. But I want them to understand that they are going to have to keep it simple, and we will work on ways to level it up and make our sentences more complex as we go along. But in the beginning, I don't want them to use Google Translate. So I want them to keep it simple. We talk about how to level up our sentences. Again, when we get into the upper levels, we talk about when to use a dictionary, okay, and how. Are you looking for a noun? Are you looking for an adjective? What is it that you're looking for? We talk about writing. We talk about editing. We talk about rewriting, all those sorts of things. And that's super, super important. So we keep it simple in 101, but in 102, we want to level up. So again, I have a PowerPoint video depending. And I kind of take them through and I give them a lot of simple sentences such as, me gusta comer, I like to eat. So then I ask them, okay, well, can you add to that sentence by answering the question, con quién, or with whom? With whom do you like to eat? So then they get a more complex sentence, me gusta comer con mis amigos. Okay. So I take them through, okay? So now answer that question for who, what, when, where, why, how, all those different things. So then they go from me gusta comer to me gusta comer tacos en restaurantes mexicanos con mis amigos. So instead of I like to eat, they're saying I like to eat tacos in Mexican restaurants with my friends. Much more detailed, much more complex, okay? And so we really, really, really work on the leveling up. Super, super easy. I've got activities that go with that. But again, you come up with a simple sentence like that and then have them add to it by answering all of the questions. Super, super easy. Leveling up, guessing meaning and context, super, super important. All right. So conversation strategies. In our courses, we use a program called Talk Abroad. I am not advocating Talk Abroad. It's just the program that we use. If you don't know what it is a website where students go and register in your course and they pay $10 for a 15-minute conversation. We do 4 during the semester. you can do 30-minute conversations, but we do 15-minute conversations because they are lower level. So what I realized is that a lot of the strategies and things that my students, I was teaching them naturally in my face-to-face, my online students were missing. This again goes back to the characteristics of Gen Z, because they don't really know about face-to-face interactions and conversations because they're on their phones texting all the time. So they need to be taught about these conversations. So this is my friend Sandrine that I've told you about earlier. She was willing to be my Spanish student. She knows just enough, Spanish to be dangerous. So my students have a graphic organizer, and they do this activity either completely online, or with my face-to-face students, we watch it in class because it is quite humorous. So it's pretty short, but it does teach them some important strategies. Okay. Sandrine, ¿cómo estás? ¿Qué tal?
Hola. Bien, gracias. ¿Y tú? ¿Y usted?
Bien, gracias. Hoy vamos a platicar un poco sobre los gustos y las actividades que hacemos, ¿verdad?
Perdón, no entiendo.
Podemos hablar de lo que te gusta hacer.
Repita, por favor.
Podemos hablar de lo que te gusta hacer.
Más despacio, por favor.
Vale. Repito lentamente. ¿Qué te gusta hacer?
Me gusta hacer.
Por ejemplo, a mí me gusta leer.
Okay. A mí me gusta leer y mirar fútbol americano.
Bien. A mí me gusta también bucear.
¿Qué significa bucear?
Bucear es nadar en el océano, pero bajo el agua para ver los peces y los animales.
Oh, wait, sí.
¿Te gustaría bucear?
Un momento, estoy pensando.
Está bien.
No me gusta bucear porque tengo miedo de los animales grandes en el agua.
Sí, entiendo. Adiós, encantada de hablar contigo.
Oh, sí, adiós. Adiós.
Okay, so as you can see, we gave them a lot of vocabulary that they might need in order to negotiate with their conversation partner. And we allowed them to have their graphic organizer with them so that they'll feel a little more comfortable. But the most important aspect of this video is the fact that Sandrine struggled, and the students really identified with her. And it actually was wonderful. They said, wow, she was struggling. That's okay. It's okay if I struggle because that's what I sound like. And I'm like, absolutely. That's the whole point. They really, really could identify with that. And the fact that I put it up there and made it okay really relaxed them. And they were like, wow, all righty, I can do this. It made such a huge difference. Sandrine and I also wrote a program for the Alabama Online High School French program, and we used some videos and of two girls in France, and one of them didn't speak French very well. And so she kind of struggled, just like Sandrine did. And what the feedback that we got from the students was, wow, it was awesome to see a student who was struggling and who was actually growing and learning along with the students at the same time. I think that sometimes we put up this idea of perfection. We say that proficiency is not perfection, but most of the examples that we're giving them are native speakers. And that's something that novice level learners, I mean, they need to see somebody who's struggling, who's just like them. So that was the first video we made. Now we've made a lot of other videos, because what I asked the students what it was that they wanted to know, and they said, we'd like to be able to say more than bien, si. So we taught them expressions. Oh, how interesting. Oh, that's sad. How cool. So we did a video that taught them about that, about expressions of interest. We also did a lesson on how to ask follow-up questions. And so they, again, have graphic organizers. I love graphic organizers, where we had them actually come up with questions. So they had to write 5 questions, and then they had to write 2 follow-up questions for each of their 5 questions. Because again, they're not exactly sure how conversations are supposed to go sometimes. So if you ask your partner, do they like to read? And they say yes, well, then you don't want to just go, okay, and move on to, what about watching movies? What about, playing sports? You want to follow up on that. Okay, well, what's your favorite book, or what type of book do you like to read, or what book are you reading now? So you want to follow up on those questions rather than just skipping from one to another like an interrogation. It's supposed to be more of a conversation that way. But again, you have to teach your students how to do that. It doesn't necessarily always come naturally to them. We also teach them about circumlocution in 102 and 201, talking around, and we give them lots of practice playing games such as Taboo. Those are really great. We also talk about nonverbal communication. We did a little of that in the very first video. You saw me using my arms for swimming, right? And ver, to see. And she was making, the motions like a shark or whatnot. So we teach them about that, but then we also are like, look at their faces. Do they have a look of, confusion or understanding, or, maybe you've said something inappropriate and they're shocked. You've got to pay attention to all those types of things as well. So we have a lesson on that. We talk to them and we give them more expressions and idioms. We talk to them about filler words such as pues, o sea, different things like that, because those are things that they really need to know. We talk a lot and we have them practice a lot the back and forth of a conversation, that it's not really turn taking, but it's sharing and listening to each other. Okay. And so that kind of brings us to my very last set of strategies. The listening strategies. And these are the ones that I'm still actually working on. I have all of the others. The listening ones I'm still working on. But the first thing that we have to tell them is that they're not going to understand everything. And again, that's okay. I spend a lot of time in my 101 and 102 classes saying, you're not going to understand everything. That's okay. You're going to sound like a first grader. That's okay. You made a mistake, but that's okay. That kind of is my mantra. It's okay. But we talk to them about that. You're not going to get everything. So we're going to listen for the gist. That's what we're doing in 101. We're going to start listening for more details in the rest of the classes, but we're listening for the main ideas. We're talking about, again, guessing meaning and context, removing distractions when you're listening to things. And one thing that has always struck me funny is that in the language classroom, we're going to play them some kind of audio and they're going to hear it 2 times. And I don't know where we came up with 2 times. Because if I'm having a conversation with you and I've said something twice, it's not like I'm going to say, look, I'm sorry, I've said that twice. I'm not going to repeat myself. We don't do that in a conversation. That never happens. We're like, okay, let me think of a new way to say it. And we're negotiating our meaning, right? So I don't understand why in language classes we do that, but a lot of times we do that. And unfortunately, sometimes on standardized tests, that's the way it is. And so we have to teach them these strategies mainly so that they can score well on these standardized tests. Most of us think, well, listening just is going to come naturally through the use of 90% target language. Well, that may be true, but if you're in a testing environment or some such, they've got to figure it out. They've got to know these strategies. They've got to learn to listen for the gist. They've got to guess meaning from context, and they have to learn to take notes. Our students don't know how to take notes. Um, Even my own kids, well, they're going to put the PowerPoint on, Schoology or Edmodo or whatever. So why should I write it down? It's up there for me to go read. And even the homework. I mean, I would write homework on the board, and rather than writing it down in their notebook, the students take a picture of it. So they really don't know about note taking. So we have to teach them about taking notes. You may start out with something as simple as, here's a list of words, circle all the words that you hear, or write down all the words that you hear, however you want to do it, to get them started. And so you really have to be strategic in your strategies. And again, these strategies are interspersed throughout my course. They are they do integrate together. The guessing meaning and context comes with so many different strategies. I mean, it was so many different modes of communication, rather. If you would like to know more about these, I am a co-host of a podcast called Step Into Mondays, again with Dr. Hope, the one with the parrot on her shoulder from the video. And a lot of the strategies and things that we have talked about here, we pretty much have episodes on those. I know the listening strategies one, we did the conversation strategies. So if you want more information, you can check us out on any of the podcasts. You can listen to those episodes. You can certainly email me, Krista Chambless at uab.edu. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm happy to share materials with you. I would love ideas. If you guys have some strategies and ideas that you use, I would love to collaborate with you. And I would like to thank you again for tuning into my session. I hope that you all were able to get something out of it.